Thank you for tuning into Game Changer TV. I'm your host, Terri Lynn, and this is the channel where every day we're telling it like it is. Today is August 24th, 2026. And why the horses? Why the horses?
Protected wild horses may be entering the slaughter pipeline under Trump. A New York Times investigation published Thursday found that federally protected wild horses sold through a government program may ultimately be transported across the border for slaughter. Some Mustangs are sold for as little as $25. Under the Bureau of Land Management's Sale Authority program, horses can be classified as unadoptable after attracting no interest during 3 one-week adoption listings. Once sold, they lose the protections retained by adopted horses. Initial buyers must agree not to slaughter the animals or knowingly sell them to someone who will. However, animal welfare advocates say that rule can be bypassed by reselling the horses through intermediaries who are not bound by the original agreement. Bureau of Land Management sales rose after Trump returned to office, with about 3,700 horses sold in 2025, more than twice the previous year's total. Around 73,000 wild horses live in federal lands in the West, while another 58,000 are held by the Bureau of Land Management at an annual cost of around $100 million. The government estimates that selling the horses placed in 2025 will avoid about $56 million in long-term care costs. The Interior Department said the Bureau of Land Management does not send horses or burros to slaughter and refers suspected violations to law enforcement. It says the program helps control overcrowding, protect herd health, and reduce taxpayer costs. However, critics question the economics. Capturing a Mustang can cost up to $3,000, while the animal may be sold for $25 and later fetch as much as $750 at a slaughter facility. Project 2025 called for Congress to let the Bureau of Land Management humanely dispose of excess horses and bureaus. The Trump administration's proposed 2026 budget also sought to remove restrictions on using federal funds to kill protected horses or sell them for slaughter, while cutting the program by 25%, from $145 million to $106 million. Senate appropriators rejected those changes and retained the protections, but Bureau of Land Management sales continued. Sanctuary operator Claire Staples told The Times that the agency presents slaughter as prohibited while allowing a system that can lead to the same outcome.
The Trump administration is rounding up America's wild horses with helicopters, selling them for $25 a head, and they're ending up in foreign slaughterhouses, carved into cuts of meat. The Mustang is freedom on 4 legs. It runs across our truck commercials and beer ads because nothing says America like a horse that answers to no one. The White House wants them off the range, and it's paying contractors to haul them away. In March, a band of Nevada Mustangs went to a livestock trader, and the next night they were on double-decker cattle trucks headed for the meat plants across the Canadian line. Loaded in the dark, shipped out of the country, and nobody tracks where they go. If that sounds familiar, it's how Trump handles anything he wants gone. Mustangs have been here longer than the country.
Oh my God. I had no idea. They have rounded up 63,000 horses and burros. They said allegedly it costs $100 million a year to feed them on BLM land. How? They don't give them hay, they don't give them grain, they don't do anything for them. They're chasing them with helicopters, which, as you know, the horses will break a leg and then die. But what is worse, we're selling them to countries that use their meat. But now, pay attention. Watch when Donald Trump is ask where we're getting the beef that he's going to sell us for less money. He says, I don't know. We all know that he's either telling a fib or he does know. Now, these horses are being sold for $25 each. Now imagine what it's going to be if they're $5.97 a pound. And yes, we need some science students to figure this out as soon as the beef hits the market. Is that not a bridge too far even for you?
Leave it to Trump to find a legal loophole to do something that is so wildly illegal and disgusting, like gathering up wild horses and sending them to slaughter and then selling their meat and exporting it. This is truly a line that's being crossed that we have never seen before. Going and gathering and rounding up protected wild horses and then selling them for meat. This is just horrific to be seen. We need to treasure our wild horses on open land. That's something that is really, truly unique, and we need to be protecting our wild horses, not slaughtering them. The Wild Free Roaming Horses and Burros Act of 1971 protects horses that are healthy from slaughter. But Trump has found this workaround, and his Bureau of Land Management is moving forward with this, gathering horses in Colorado and sending them to slaughter.
I am no longer eating meat after Donald Trump would not even disclose what country he is importing 300 metric tons of meat. All right, let me correct that. 300,000 metric tons of meat. Of course, the cattle rancher. They're also hunting America's wild horses to export the meat to countries that eat horses. What?
We have right now. The growth will take care of that very easily.
Mr. President, 700.
Question about it.
Mr. President, on the beef deal, which countries did you make that deal with? What are the sources
which
of
deal?
The beef deal?
I don't want to say which countries, but there are a few countries, but they're going to be sending in the highest quality beef, and it's something that we need.
I am no longer eating meat after Donald Trump would not even disclose what country he is importing 300 metric tons of meat. All right, let me correct that. 300,000 metric tons of meat.
Yes or no? Does Trump view himself as a businessman above all else? Yes, Donald Trump frequently describes himself as a businessman first and foremost, using his identity as a deal maker and a corporate outsider as the core framework for how he views his leadership style, decision making, and approach to governing. Yes or no? Did Trump say he was going to run the United States like a business? Yes, Donald Trump explicitly stated during his 2016 campaign and subsequent presidency that he intended to manage the government and the White House using corporate principles, remarking at the time, if we could run our country the way I've run my company, if we could run our country the way I've run my company, we would have a country that you would be so proud of. Really? A successful businessman or the king of bankruptcy? He bankrupted six companies, and has said that he will run the country as a business. Yeah, straight into the ground, into insolvency. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm hungry. It's 9 o'clock at night, and I haven't eaten all day. My mind is going crazy. I'm trying to stay focused. How many times has Trump's businesses filed bankruptcy? Although Trump has never filed personal bankruptcy, hotels and casino businesses of his have declared bankruptcy 6 times between 1991 and 2009 due to its inability to meet required payments and to renegotiate debt with banks, owners of stocks and bonds, and various small businesses, unsecured creditors. So he says he's a businessman and he wants to run America the way that he's run his businesses, straight into the ground. Anyone still wondering how Trump could have claimed bankruptcy 6 times and be sued 3,500 times by business partners, by contractors, by his own clients, by his employees, by university students, and by his banks and 21 attorneys? But he says he's going to run America the same way he did his businesses. The national debt just crossed $39 trillion, almost doubling since Trump vowed to erase it. He views himself as a businessman. Yes or no, has Trump been described as a ruthless businessman? Yes, Donald Trump has frequently been characterized as a ruthless, aggressive, or combative businessman by biographers, media analysis, and critics throughout his career. Ruthless businessman. Yes or no, has Trump ever been so ruthless in business that he sabotaged a deal? Yes, Donald Trump has a long documented history of using aggressive, hardball negotiation tactics, such as walking away from agreements, forcing renegotiations at the last minute, or refusing to pay contractors the full amount owed after work was completed, which critics and former partners often describe as sabotaging or undermining fair deals for his own financial gain. Now, we're going to go back into the horses, but I need to show y'all his mindset. Trump's beef import plan backfires as ranchers warn of betrayal. To understand a person, do criminologists analyze a person's past behaviors to understand their thinking pattern and actions? Yes, criminologists, criminal psychologists, and behavioral analysts systematically analyze past behaviors to understand an individual's thinking patterns and predict future actions. Yes or no? Does Trump have a long history of offending people? Yes, Donald Trump has a long, well-documented history of making public statements, policy decisions, and personal remarks that have offended various individuals, groups, and organizations throughout his career in business, entertainment, and politics. Now, he wants to run his country the way he did his businesses in the past. Well, let's talk about eminent domain. Eminent domain is the power of the government to take private property for public use. Now, we're talking about the horses being driven off federal land, and his past way of doing business. He still prides himself on being a businessman. He says that's how he's going to run the country as a businessman. So let's look at eminent domain. To look back at Trump's past behaviors to predict where he's going now.
Life, you have a thing called condemnation, and cities have the right to condemn for the good of a city, whether it's New York, whether it's Los Angeles, whether it's any other place. Atlantic City is one of those cities, and it's got the right to condemn.
In the 1990s, Donald Trump was behind an outrageous case of eminent domain abuse. Vera Koking was an elderly widow who lived for decades in her home beside Atlantic City's boardwalk. She loved that home. And Donald Trump wanted Vera's home so he could put in limousine parking for his casino across the street.
Everybody coming into Atlantic City sees that property, and it's not fair to Atlantic City and the people. They're staring at this terrible house instead of staring at beautiful fountains and beautiful other things that would be good.
You're bullying these people out because they're...
Excuse me, that's wrong. But for you to use the word bully, John, is very unfair. This is a government case. This is not Donald Trump.
Yes, it's Donald Trump. It's you and your cronies in government working together.
For you to call these people cronies is very unfair. To be calling good public servants cronies.
An unaccountable state agency tried to condemn Vera Koking's property and transfer it to Donald Trump. he convinced the government officials to use their eminent domain power to take Vera's home. This was public power, but used for private gain.
We have been so nice to this woman. I offered her a lot of money out of this, a little thing called heart.
Heart? He doesn't have no heart, that man. The only thing he has is what he's worried about himself.
Basic to freedom is that if you own something, it's yours, that the government doesn't just come and take it away from you.
Do you want to live in a city where you can't build schools? Do you want to live in a city where you can't build roads or highways or have access to hospitals? Condemnation is a necessary evil.
But you're not talking about a hospital. You're talking about a building a rich guy finds ugly.
Across the country, land-hungry developers have teamed up with tax-hungry politicians to bulldoze people's homes and businesses on the mere possibility that the new, wealthier businesses will generate more jobs or more taxes. It is time to end this kind of abuse. Represented by the Institute for Justice, Vera beat Donald Trump and saved her home.
If there is justice, then they would have never done to me what they're doing. I want to see justice in here.
That part of the story reminded me of him bulldozing part of Big Bend right now. Big bulldozers rip into Big Bend National Park, driving anger and heartbreak. Bulldozers tear through Big Bend National Park as Trump's border work pushes ahead. So he has no problem destroying things for his self-interest, okay? Let's see what this says. Yes or no, does Trump view himself as a businessman above all else? Yes, Donald Trump frequently describes himself as a businessman first and foremost. So if Trump, the businessman, I see I left an S out. So if Trump, the businessman, didn't care about displacing an elderly woman, do you think he really cares about displacing a horse or horses? Or other people? And why would he want to remove the wild horses? Y'all think about this, okay? Now we're studying his past behaviors, how he does things, because his number one identifier is that he identifies as a businessman, a ruthless businessman, by any means necessary for his personal good. So why would he want to remove the wild horses? Now we saw he likes to invoke into his business practices the practice of eminent domain, taking property. And he says he wants to run the country like he did his companies. Okay? Yes or no? By Trump removing the wild horses on federal land in western states, could that make it easier to reclaim that property for another use if the horses are gone? Yes, removing wild horses reduces grazing pressure and management conflicts on public rangelands, which can make it administratively easier for the Bureau of Land Management to allocate those federal lands for alternative commercial uses like cattle ranching, energy development, or mining. So what is the reason why he's wanting to remove these horses and claim it for another use? Yes or no, even though it is legally defined differently, could federal land relocation be considered as eminent domain? Yes, conceptually and practically, if federal land relocation can be considered very similar to eminent domain, although they operate under distinct legal doctrines. Sovereign coercion. In both incidents, the government exercises superior sovereign authority to extinguish an existing group or owner's occupancy and control over a geographic area, often without their voluntary consent. Yes or no? Could a dictator in power make a land grab of federal land? Yet where the horses are. Yes, a dictator with total control over the government can use military force, executive orders, or rigged laws to take over federal land for personal or state use. How can a dictator take it? Ignore the laws. A dictator breaks or changes the Constitution and federal rules. Use the military. Armed troops push people off the land and secure the borders. Or horses. Declare ownership. The ruler claims public property as their own private property. Yes or no? Would it be considered a land grab for a dictator in power to seize control of federal land? Yes, a dictator in power seizing control of federal land for personal benefit, political consolidation, or unauthorized use would generally be considered a land grab. Why it fits the definition. The term land grab refers to the swift, unlawful, coercive, or unfair acquisition and consolidation of land and resource control by a government, individual, or entity. When an authoritarian ruler bypasses legal frameworks or abuses state power to convert public or national assets into private or regime-controlled property, it meets the standard political and legal definitions of a land grab. If the government wanted to reclaim federal land for another use that was inhabited by wild horses, would the wild horses need to be relocated? Would the wild horses need to be relocated? Yes, under U.S. federal law, specifically the Wild Free Roaming Horses and Bureaus Act, wild Mustangs and bureaus are protected or designated public lands. If the government changes the use of that land or removes it from herd management area, the protected horses on that land must be gathered and relocated. Yes or no? Are the wild horses Trump is rounding up on federal land? Yes, the wild horses being rounded up by the federal government are located on federal public lands in the American West. These gathers are carried out by the Bureau of Land Management, an agency within the U.S. Department of Interior to manage herd sizes and range health. Is he after the land like he was for Vera's? Because he's been described as a ruthless businessman for his own self-interest. What could he possibly want that land for? Trump plans to build freedom cities. Now, remember, he views himself as a businessman. And he views himself as the best real estate developer. And he has a vision to build freedom cities. Where do you think they're going to go? Trump proposes building futuristic, Jetson-like freedom cities on federal land. And let me just throw this in here for free. We know that they use propaganda to sell their political visions. Did y'all know that next year there's going to be a new Jetson movie? The original Jetson came out, I think, like in 1972 and ran till 73, and then reruns in the 80s. And Jim Carrey's going to star in a Jetson movie. Trump proposes building futuristic Jetson-like freedom cities where? On federal land. And where are the wild horses being removed from? Federal land that could be claimed for another use. Interest in Trump's freedom cities grows.
The Trump administration is opening the door to using federal land for freedom cities. Libertarian company towns that advocates envision could be used for housing, nuclear power, semiconductor, and other technological development without regulatory constraint. President Trump, whose zeal to dismantle environmental regulations is likely to lead to more pollution and exacerbate climate change, promoted the idea for Freedom Cities in 2023. The American Enterprise Institute, the Frontier Foundation, and other advocates for Freedom Cities say they could be built on undeveloped federal land near Las Vegas, Boise, Bend, Oregon, Grand Junction, Colorado, and other existing cities. Congress would have to exempt the cities from laws developers consider impediments. No proposal for Freedom Cities is before Congress today, but advocates say the Trump administration's push to privatize federal lands for housing opens the window for politicians to support the development of new cities on federal land.
Yes or no, in order for Trump to build his Freedom Cities out in western states, would wild horses need to be relocated? Yes, if new cities were constructed on the undeveloped public lands, federal lands, in the American West where wild horses roam, the animals occupying those specific building sites would have to be moved or removed. Well, Trump showed with Vera he'd have no problem removing that cold, hard, moving it, selling it for beef. Yes or no? Are the horses that Trump is removing located on federal land? Yes, the wild horses and bureaus being rounded up and managed by the Bureau of Land Management are located on federal public lands across western states. Yes or no? Are the wild horses being rounded up in areas managed by the Bureau of Land Management tracts? Yes, the Bureau of Land Management actively conducts roundups referred to as gathers to remove excess wild horses and burros from land rangelands and herd management areas across western states. Where are the most of the wild horses that Trump is rounding up? By far, the majority of the American wild horses are rounded up and managed in Nevada, which accounts for more than over half, 37,000 of the total wild horse population on federal public lands in the western U.S. Nevada, Wyoming, Oregon, Utah, California, and other western states. Now, okay, this is where they're picking up the horses: Nevada, Wyoming, Oregon, Utah, California, and other western states. Did y'all hear what he said about Trump cities, the Freedom Cities?
Las Vegas, Boise, Bend, Oregon, Grand Junction, Colorado, and other existing cities.
He named the states for the Freedom Cities that would be proposed that line up where the wild horses are being removed from. Do you think that's coincidental? Are wild horses being removed from Utah, Nevada, Colorado, Idaho, and Wyoming? Yes, wild horses are actively being removed from Utah, Nevada, Colorado, Idaho, and Wyoming. The Bureau of Land Management scheduled active roundups targeting the permanent removal of over 14,000 animals across western public lands through October, citing severe overpopulation and drought-strained rangelands. If Trump's proposal for Freedom Cities were to go forward, would the wild horses need to be rounded up in those areas? Yes. Yes, if a Freedom City were built on federal public land in the American West where the wild horses roam, any Mustangs living directly on that specific footprint would have to be removed, relocated, or rounded up. Habitat loss. Freedom Cities are purposed for large, undeveloped tracts of federal land. Any construction there would displace local wildlife, including protected wild horses. Says, to clear land for development, the government would have to gather the animals just as they do for other land use changes. And just like Trump didn't care about Vera, he don't care about these horses. Freedom Cities could transform U.S. innovation. Administrative autonomy focused initiatives and a willingness to take risks can yield huge rewards, Freedom cities, Trump's cities. Yes or no? Could Trump's proposed freedom cities be smart cities? Yes, Donald Trump's proposed freedom cities could function as high tech or smart cities because they are envisioned as ground up, futuristic hubs focused heavily on advanced innovation, next generation manufacturing, aerospace, and modern infrastructure like vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. New infrastructure built from scratch and on undeveloped land, allowing for completely modern digital and physical utility grids. Technology hubs framed by advocates and tech sectors planners as experimental sandboxes for cutting edge industries, automation, and advanced tech. Futuristic transport, explicitly tied to pioneer new transit methods such as personal air mobility and flying car development. Would it be easier to manage people in hubs because of data management to identify each person in the hub? Smart cities use data hubs and sensors to track traffic, energy, and public safety. This technology makes cities safer, services run faster, but it also lets authorities track individuals closely. Yes or no? Is it feasible wild horses could be removed to construct smart cities? Yes, it is logistically and legally feasible. While the federal government does not explicitly remove wild horses for the sole purpose of constructing smart cities, it routinely clears thousands of wild horses from public lands to accommodate subdivision expansions, green energy infrastructure, and private technology development. Land use changes. Public lands can be reallocated, swapped, or sold for commercial use through the acts of Congress or changes in federal law use plans. If localized regions is designated for a massive tech hub or smart city project, the houses occupying that area can be legally zoned out. Data centers in those regions. Data centers are new massive data centers being built in Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada. Yes, massive artificial intelligence and cloud data centers are being planned and built across the Mountain West, shifting into rural areas of Utah, Nevada, Wyoming, Idaho, and Colorado to tap into cheap land and power sources. Google adding a major footprint in Nevada? Yes or no? Would data centers be located near smart cities? Yes, data centers are often placed near smart cities to provide fast data processing, low response times, and strong support for connected urban networks. And Trump is promoting it. Trump proposes building futuristic Jetson-like freedom cities on federal land. So here's Trump making the sale for future freedom cities.
Past generations of Americans pursued big dreams and daring projects that once seemed absolutely impossible. They pushed across an unsettled continent and built new cities in the wild frontier. They transformed American life with the interstate highway system, magnificent it was, and they launched a vast network of satellites into orbit all around the earth. But today, our country has lost its boldness. Under my leadership, we will get it back in a very big way. If you look at just 3 years ago, what we were doing was unthinkable, how good it was, how great it was for our country. Our objective will be a quantum leap in the American standard of living. That's what will happen. Here are just a few of the ways we can do it. Almost 1/3 of the landmass of the United States is owned by the federal government, with just a very, very small portion of that land, just a fraction, 1/2 of 1%. Would you believe that? We should hold a contest to charter up to 10 new cities and award them to the best proposals for development. In other words, we'll actually build new cities in our country again. These freedom cities will reopen the frontier, reignite American imagination, and give hundreds of thousands of young people and other people, all hardworking families, a new shot at home ownership and, in fact, the American dream.
If Trump's Freedom Cities were built on federal land, would federal government have broad power to manage its property, which can change how local laws work and limit how much self-governance residents have? Yes, building Freedom Cities on federal land would rely on the broad power of the Federal Property Clause, which allows Congress to make all needful rules respecting federal property. This authority can preempt state and local laws, meaning traditional municipal governments and local zoning rules would likely not apply. Instead of standard resident-led self-governance, these experimental zones are envisioned to operate under federal oversight or private corporate management. Imagine Elon Musk being your landlord, or Bill Gates, or Mark Zuckerberg, or the federal government, because it's built on federal land. If Trump proposed Freedom Cities were built on federal land, would local law enforcement still apply, or would federal enforce? If Donald Trump's proposed Freedom Cities were established on federal land, law enforcement jurisdiction would depend entirely on how Congress or the executive branch, Donald Trump, structures the land legal status. If designated as an exclusive federal jurisdiction, similar to military bases, federal agencies would handle all policing. Are crimes committed on federal land federal crimes? Yes, crimes committed on federal land generally fall under federal jurisdiction and are prosecuted as federal offenses. This includes locations like national parks, military bases, federal buildings, and federal prisons. On Trump's dystopian Agenda 47, Freedom Cities. Dystopian. Yes or no, could data centers be used in the proposed Trump Freedom Cities? Yes, high-tech infrastructure, advanced manufacturing, strategic technology hubs, which align with Freedom Cities proposals backed by tech policy advocates and the Trump administration's focus on artificial intelligence, could incorporate data centers. Yes or no, are proposed Trump Freedom Cities being considered for Utah, Nevada, Idaho, Wyoming, and Colorado? Yes, think tanks and policy groups like the American Enterprise Institute have mapped potential Western locations for Trump's proposed Freedom Cities, targeting federal public lands in states including Utah, Nevada, Boise, Idaho, Colorado near Grand Junction. Wyoming has also been discussed as regional advocates due to its high volume of federal land. Think tank blueprints, organizations like the American Enterprise Institute, expanded on the concept via housing affordability. Haven't they all been talking about housing affordability? They're going to say you can afford it in these smart Trump cities, these freedom cities. Expanded on the concept via housing affordability frameworks, identifying specific Bureau of Land Management states as theoretical. Yes or no, are the proposed Trump Freedom Cities being considered for Utah, Nevada, Idaho? Yep, we just looked at that. And guess what else is happening in these areas? Yes or no, are the water reserves low in Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Idaho? Yes, major shared regional reserves, specifically the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation Systems, fed by the Colorado River like Lake Mead and Lake Powell, are at historic lows due to a prolonged multi-decade drought and heavy usage. Really, really heavy usage. Like the water doesn't replenish itself, like the snow don't melt and go into the riverways. Decade-long drought in Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Idaho. So, where they're wanting to build the freedom cities is where they're removing the horses, where they want the data centers, and where the water is disappearing at.
Water shortages could be the biggest mass mortality event the world has ever seen. I am talking billions of people dying. The only way we ensure people remain safe is by being invested in the United States Water Reserve.
Yes or no? Could people residing in smart cities make it easier for government to ration water? Yes, smart cities use digital sensors, smart meters, and data networks to track water use in real time. This technology helps governments spot leaks fast, control flow, and enforce strict limits on home and businesses during a drought or shortage. Freedom Cities' push on public land gains viability under Trump. Yes or no? Could a dictator build a smart city in the desert to make you dependent on the system and deter escape by the harsh desert conditions? Yes, an authoritarian regime could build a technologically integrated city in a hostile desert environment to maximize control over a population. And these places are desert areas, just like Saudi Arabia's The Line out in the middle of a desert. Saudi Arabia puts the future of cities on the line out in the middle of the desert, making escaping impossible with no water. Yes or no? If society broke down, could wild horses be used for transportation? Now, remember when Obama did the cash for clunkers and took the old cars away? What if society completely broke down and people had to go back to horses? Yes or no? If society broke down, could wild horses be used for transportation? So they're going to eliminate any methods? Yes, if society broke down, wild horses could be used for transportation because they are large, strong, and capable of carrying people and heavy loads over long distances without fuel or road. Historical use. Humans used horses for travel and work for thousands of years before cars. If Trump's proposal for freedom cities were to go forward, would the wild horses need to be rounded up in those areas? Any Mustangs living directly on that specific footprint would have to be removed, relocated, or rounded up. Freedom cities are proposed for large underdeveloped tracts of federal land. Any construction there would displace local wildlife, including potential wild horses. So this is a horse that could be used for transportation, but all of them are going to be gone. Yes or no? Is it feasible that smart cities could function as open-air prisons? Yes. While not designed for that purpose, the infrastructure of a smart city makes hyper-surveillance and total behavioral control technically feasible. Mass surveillance, facial recognition, movement control, geofencing that can lock you down, resource gating, digital IDs can disable access to transit, financial choking, central bank digital currencies can freeze your funds, predictive policing, algorithms flag and restrict suspected individuals preemptively, social scoring, rewards or punishments dictate daily physical freedom. Is Trump still wanting to develop his freedom cities? Donald Trump has not personally emphasized his Freedom Cities proposal in recent public remarks, but outside policy groups, tech investors, and libertarian coalitions continue actively lobbying the administration and pushing legislation to turn the concept into reality on federal land. Advocacy groups such as the Freedom City Coalition and backers of experimental startup cities have held discussions with administration officials to advance deregulated hub proposals. It's time to build new U.S. cities. And where did they say in 2025 they wanted to build these? The same places where they're pulling out the horses. Oregon, Arizona, Utah, California, Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Colorado, New Mexico, Montana, and Wyoming. Now's the time, they're saying. And they're making preparations by removing. Yes or no, in the future, if Donald Trump's Freedom Cities would go into effect and be built in Western state on federal land with the Bureau of Land Management, would the Bureau of Land Management operate those? We talked about that. It could be the federal government. And look who else could own it. Whether Donald Trump's Freedom Cities will go into effect and be operated by the Bureau of Land Management is uncertain, and no simple yes or no can apply. The concept proposes building new cities on federal land, but the Bureau of Land Management would not operate them. Instead, plans calls for transferring or selling the land to private entities or developers. Who do you think would be the people buying this up? What rich private developers do you think would be buying these? Trump hosts dinner at the White House with tech giants. Yes or no? Could Trump or the Bureau of Land Management sell federal land to private individuals? Yes. So they're probably all meeting together discussing these smart cities that can be open air prisons, on how to get rid of the horses, how to develop the property, because Trump is a developer, and promising them probably each city. Yes, under specific existing laws, the Bureau of Land Management has the legal authority to sell certain tracts of public federal land to private individuals or entities, though it cannot legally sell off entire national parks or protected monuments at its own discretion. But the Federal Land Policy and Management Act allows the Bureau of Land Management to identify and sell specific public land parcels if the sale serves important public objectives, a public utility, such as a community expansion or economic development. Could Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Apple buy it? Because Google's interested. Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Apple, MAGA. Is MAGA going to rule? Do companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Apple want to be involved in the creation of smart cities? Yes, major tech companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Apple actively want involvement in smart cities because these projects create massive multi-billion-dollar markets for their cloud services, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things hardware, and data analytics platforms. Something evil is coming. Could companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Apple run smart cities? Yes, tech giants like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Apple possess the financial capital, cloud infrastructure, and artificial intelligence tools to build and run smart cities, though doing so fully presents massive political, logistical, and privacy challenges. They'll just change the legality of it and make everything legal. Could companies like Microsoft, Amazon, and Apple be used to create basically an open air prison? Theoretically, yes. The combined infrastructure of major tech companies could be used to create a digital open-air prison through pervasive surveillance and control. While these platforms were built for convenience and commerce, the exact same tools can be inverted to restrict human freedom. I'm sorry, y'all, I'm really hungry and I feel dizzy. So please bear with me in this video. Could we be seeing some pay to play going on? Because did Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Apple all contribute towards Trump's inauguration? Yes, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Apple all contributed $1 million each towards Donald Trump's 2025 presidential inauguration fund. And remember, they all had front row seats at the inauguration. Freedom City's push on public land gains viability under Trump. Yes or no, if Trump created 10 Freedom Cities, smart cities with his name on it, could he benefit personally from the creation of those cities? Yes, if federally backed Freedom Cities were developed with private entities or bearing a specific name, the potential for indirect or direct brand value, real estate opportunities, or associated commercial ventures could theoretically create avenues for personal or familial financial benefit, though the concept remains an undefined policy proposal rather than an enacted plan. Now, y'all, while all this is going on and the horses being slaughtered and everything that's going on, Bill Gates owns roughly 275,000 acres of private farmland in areas where water is also drying up. He has holdings in Louisiana, Arkansas, Arizona, Nebraska, Washington State, Illinois, Mississippi, Florida, Idaho, Indiana, New Mexico, California, Colorado, Michigan, Wyoming, Iowa, and North Carolina. I've just put so many things. Okay, meatless food startup. Okay, so he's involved with fake meat. He's involved with all things bugs, eating bugs for protein, edible vaccines, growing vaccines on his farmland. Bill Gates has invested in U.S. agriculture. Bill Gates did not invest directly in Burger King, but he is a major investor in Impossible Foods, the plant-based meat company that supplies Burger King's famous Impossible Whopper. Bill Gates funded the development of a machine called the Omni Processor that treats poo-poo water so you can drink it. Bill Gates' Hampton Creek Foods is fake eggs. Bill Gates invested in corn. Bill Gates owned 14,000 acre property in Washington State called 100 Circle Farms that grows potatoes, that serves McDonald's. They are going to control everything, and then he's got a peel on all the fruits and vegetables. They are plotting for the land grab.
Have you been seeing how the U.S. is rounding up all of its wild horses to be sold for slaughter in foreign countries at $25 a horse? The biggest question I got for this is, why would the Trump administration tell the Bureau of Land Management to do this? Like, it's not going to solve our $40 trillion debt. You're not making much off the horse. If anything, I've seen the videos of the helicopters. You're spending more on the helicopter gas than you are getting for the horse. So you're not making any money off of it. Affordability, I guess, you are importing those 300,000 metric tons of mystery meat. Maybe this is the mystery meat. Maybe you're just feeding Americans their own American-made Mustang horses. Maybe are the horses democratic? Did they tweet something mean? Did you remove their birthright citizenship? I'm just trying to wonder, because Mustangs is what they're mainly rounding up, are like the most American horse. That's like the bald eagle of horses. and they're rounding them up to sell them for slaughter in foreign countries for $25 a horse. Look, if the idea is, look, we're going to go to your national monuments, your national parks. We're going to go to all the animals. They're America's. This administration claims it's theirs. We're going to sell them. We're going to cut down the forest. We're going to slaughter the horses. We're going to do all that because guess what? It's our land. It's our land. This administration. It's ours. We don't care what the American people think. We're going to do rape, pillage, whatever it is, as much of the land, as much of its resources as possible. Look, if that's the case, just tell me that that's your policy stance. Like that's what this administration is. But I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing a bunch of Republicans and other people say that they support, their national parks. They support these animals. They don't want this. So somebody explain this to me. Why are we sending our horses to slaughter, our wild horses? That, by the way, there's not many of them. Not many of them left.
Breaking. U.S. ranchers are accusing Trump of betrayal after he announced a plan to temporarily cut tariffs and allow up to 300,000 metric tons of additional ground beef imports into the country.
So Donald Trump is rounding up protected horses and sending them overseas for as cheap as $25 per horse to die so that he could sell their meat. And then Donald Trump is looking at bringing 300,000 metric tons of ground beef into the United States. Which issue A, that is not America first, that's not made in America, but also issue B, are we sure it's beef? We're shipping horses out for their meat to be sold and then bringing back 300,000 tons of beef. Are we sure it's beef? I'm not eating it. You guys can eat it. Enjoy.
I know what I'm about to say might sound crazy, but I need you to hear me out. So it's being confirmed that the Trump administration has been slaughtering our nation's horses, which would not be legal despite the fact they found a loophole, which is rounding up the horses, sending them overseas to slaughter to get out of the law. Now it's also, and I'm sure it's just a coincidence, okay? I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Recently, the Trump admin is importing hundreds of billions of dollars of beef to come in at a 25% discounted rate. Once again, we're finding out about both of these news stories around the same time. We're importing a lot of foreign beef, and also it's, being found out that we're slaughtering a bunch of horses overseas. Once again, I am sure it's just a coincidence. I don't know. Let me know what you think.
The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Proverbs 27:12. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. Proverbs 22:3. Y'all, we're in some crazy times. Proverbs 12:10 says, the godly care for their animals, but the wicked are always cruel. One translation says, but the mercies of an evil man is cruel. Yes or no? If a man can be cruel to an animal, he can be cruel to a human. Yes, psychologists and experts who study violence note a strong link between animal cruelty and human abuse. People who are able to hurt animals, like Trump does not care about these horses, often show a lack of empathy and emotional control. This cruel behavior can spill over and lead to harm against people too. Cruelty's coming. A man is known by how he treats his animal. And Trump has zero compassion on animals. Therefore, he cannot have compassion on humans. And y'all look, every single president, I've got them listed since John F. Kennedy, all had a animal. They all had a dog in the White House. Have we seen one with Trump? Yes or no? Does Trump have a dog in the White House like all the other presidents? No. Donald Trump did not have a dog or any other pet in the White House, breaking the long-standing presidential tradition. No time. Donald Trump has stated that he did not have the time to care for a pet while in office. He remarked during 2019 rally that walking a dog on the White House lawn would feel phony to him. He became the first modern U.S. president in over a century to serve without any pets. Cold-hearted. Y'all, this is bigger than horses. We need to prepare for what is about to happen. If they can round up animals, they can round up people. Because Jesus said in Matthew 24, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Rounding them up for the slaughter. Is it feasible that the two stories breaking at the same time concerning the horses could be a smokescreen? Yes, in the fields of political science and media studies, this concept is known as diversionary theory or a smokescreen. Governments or organizations sometimes release high emotion stories to crowd out critical news. Controversial policies are often announced during major distracting breaking news cycles. High interest topics like animal welfare or food safety, we're seeing both of them, easily capture public attention and dominate headlines to keep you from asking other questions.
On the beef deal, which countries did you make that deal with? What are the sources
Which
of
deal?
the beef deal?
I don't want to say which countries, but there are a few countries, but they're going to be sending in the highest quality beef, and it's something that we need.
Yes or no, is it feasible that the two stories breaking at the same time with the wild horses is a smokescreen? Yes, it is technically feasible that simultaneous news stories are used as a distraction, a concept often referred to as bearing the lead or a smokescreen. Yes or no, is it possible that smart city implementation conferences that are still covert could be a smokescreen? Yes, it is possible. Organizations or local governments sometimes hold private invite-only or covert planning meetings, preliminary workshops, or vendor briefings before announcing a public smart city project to the community. Smart Cities and Development Conferences 2026. Major smart city and urban development conferences are scheduled. The remainder of 2026 include Smart Cities Connect Conference in DC, September 22nd through 24th, and the global flagship Smart City Expo World Congress in Barcelona, Spain, November 3rd through 5th. Smart City Expo World Congress in Barcelona, November 3rd through 5th, the world's largest annual summit for the urban innovation and digital transformation. We've got some in Latvia, Washington, D.C., Colombia, and Spain. But guess what? God is calling to the wild horses.
Okay, check this out. So blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And the Greek word used for meek is praus. And so praus or prautis is translated as gentle, mild, or meek. But it can also be used as regulated anger, tame, or subdued. Now this word was used by the Greeks as a military term. And what they would do is they would go out into the wild and capture these wild horses, and they would meeken them. And they would categorize them for different purposes, such as work, like pulling carriages, racing, or to be used as a war horse. Now, to be meekened means to be made powerless, subdued by their master. They still hold all the strength and power and resilience, but it is now being directed in the will of the master instead of just running wild. And so now you have these wild-hearted horses being trained and used in battle. These were the best kind of horses because they just had no fear and they would charge full force at the enemy. And as such, Jesus captures the wild-hearted people, the wild horses, people with strength, power, resilience, and he meekens them. He tames them and prepares them for battle. But not everyone is wild-hearted, as some were raised in the stable. And Jesus also categorizes us for different purposes, such as apostleship, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers. And so once meekened, they could be pointed in the right direction. They also reserve their anger for the right moment under full control. Jesus also says that I am meek and gentle. And Jesus also has a righteous anger, perfect and flawless, and is reserved for the right moment under complete control. This moment in particular would be the Battle of Armageddon. So mercy now, wrath later. And it's not the fact that Jesus is this wild-hearted, wild-spirited person. It's the fact that he is so strong, so resilient, so powerful. He could destroy an entire army in the snap of his fingers like Thanos, but yet he chooses not to and reserves it for the right moment. It is the strong and the powerful yet self-controlled people who will inherit the earth, those who have a sword but never have to unsheath it.
We're going to need you to share over social media every bit of news that you get about what's happening, because they're not going to tell us the truth. He's allowed his friends to buy up all of our news stations and radio stations, everything. They control all of the media. So we're not going to know the truth. We're going to need you. This is how far we've fallen here in the United States. We are being run by a group of elite criminals who launder money, fund terrorist organizations, and traffic children. They are not going to tell us the truth. And we're going to need you guys to help. All you have to do is share the news. Whatever your country is telling you, it's more likely to be the truth today than what my country has to say. Thank you for your...
check your heart and watch to see who you're trusting in. I love y'all. Thank you for watching. If you appreciate the content that you find on this channel, would you prayerfully consider supporting the ministry?